Update. I am joined today by former Senator, current head of the Missouri AFL-CIO, Jay Kummel. Welcome to. Have you ever been in the studio for this update?
No, I haven't been to this one yet. Thanks.
So, just so everyone knows, just show notes. First off, we're going to get to the clue board. We're going to get to talking about drug dealing. We're going to talk about politics. But I have to tell you, Kelton's not here. The last time I tried this with Senator Huff, it went totally just the shits. I don't even, but honestly, the time we actually got it working, we thought it wasn't working and we pulled the plug on it, but we got it fixed. So if this doesn't sound just right or look just right, it's probably because I'm doing computer stuff, which usually goes poorly. But I appreciate you being willing to come in even without Kelton here.
That's right. We'll give it our best try.
Yeah, we'll make it we'll give it a shot. Actually, somehow Kelton he's sick today. He's watching us somehow through a computer, like not like everyone else is, just like his own private. I don't know, but this. I got a little bit of good news to start off with. My friend Austin Peterson tapes a morning show, Wake Up America. This is a Stein from his shop, Less Government, More Beer. He actually had his show today. It's a 2-year anniversary of his show. Retweeted or shared or something by the president of Argentina. That dude with the hair, chainsaw guy. That guy shared his show, and he had the #1 show on Twitter today.
How about that?
So congratulations to Austin. It's a cool kind of innovative thing. And who would think a person of Jeff City knows the president of Argentina? Like, I don't know the president of Argentina or any.
I couldn't tell you.
Any of those, Mexico Juniors and none of that. So you had a good night on primary night.
Yeah, I thought so. We did. I'm making this number up because now I've forgotten it, but it's somewhere in the neighborhood of 94% of our endorsed races on both sides of the aisle won in primary. So we're pretty happy with that.
I want to get to the Democrats you endorsed.
Sure.
But I want to first talk. There has been a sea change. And it is, I think, nationally, too, where Republicans were reflexively anti-labor on all fronts. They just started off saying no. And then in Missouri, it was weird. When they needed the majority, when they had to win tough swing districts they hadn't won before, they wanted pro-labor Republicans.
Right.
Then, we have cycles. You're here for 8 years, like in the House, then you're out. They got to where they hated labor candidates, and they would try to run them out of primaries.
Right.
And now there's been a sea change, and it started some nationally. You had some firefighters, carpenters, and now the AFL-CIO is endorsed some Republicans and seen some labor money, I think, make a difference in some of these races. Walk me through the change nationally and here in Missouri in the thinking there.
Well, I'll tell you, first of all, poll just came out a couple of days ago that approval for labor unions is at an all-time high, 70% amongst nationwide. And so, I think that it's become okay to understand that it's great to support people that want good wages and benefits. Mm-hmm. We don't have to be the devil on the other side. I think that, if you would ask most of our unions and the businesses that they work with on a daily basis, we're actually really good labor management partners. We want them to succeed. Do we want a little more for ourselves than maybe would be given to us normally? Absolutely. And we're going to continue to fight for those things, but we don't, the public doesn't, they see the big strikes. They don't see the stuff that we're always working together on. We're trying just as hard as everybody else to bring jobs into the state of Missouri, to make sure we keep the ones that we got.
And we're union contractors that show up here mad at unions.
I think that's right. That's right.
You very seldom see union contractors here ticked off at labor unions. I do think, though, it felt like for a while, the Republicans took the majority, guys, 25 years ago, give or take.
Right.
There was a time when I think labor unions were a little bit slow to be an interest group. Because let's be honest, you're the president of one of the most influential and largest interest groups in the state of Missouri.
Yeah.
You really aren't an arm of the Democrat Party. You're an interest group fighting for your folks, right?
That's right.
And sometimes that fight means you're electing Democrats. And I would say still reflexively most of the time it is. But sometimes you get in a Republican primary where there's no hope of a Democrat winning that seat. Having to me, pro-business and pro-labor go hand in hand. A fiscal conservative that you can support, I think it's just made common sense.
Well, and it's no secret. We've got a percentage of our membership that are voting that way, one way or another. And
they started voting that way before you guys started endorsing that way. Is that fair to say?
I think that's fair to say, and I think that social issues. I'm not, foolish enough to think it's something other
Sure.
than that, but social
I think
issues.
exactly right.
What we'd like to tell our people is you need to vote your pocketbook first. But sometimes those lines intersect. And the reality is that we want to help steer them in a direction where people that we can work with, and there's good people on both sides of the aisle, and I know you would agree with that.
Oh, gosh.
And quite frankly, after Right to Work was defeated so soundly here in Missouri,
Yeah.
I think that it became okay for maybe the other side of the aisle to come and say, you know what, the people spoke. We're going to leave that. We're going to leave those big issues alone like that, and we can work with people.
I thought it was it really set a tone for the Parson administration when he comes into office like the end of June. The right to work vote was in early August. It was resounding, and he was at a luncheon I think later that week and said, "Look, the folks have spoken. I don't think we need to go back and ask him, 'Are you sure?' every 2 years." I thought that set a tone for his administration. Would you say the Parson administration has been anti-labor?
No, and I will tell you this. I think that there's issues that some unions would say are. Certainly, I think we've had issues where state workers can't get a contract, can't even get a meeting to have a contract. But what I would say is that the governor's administration, from day one, he said workforce development, job creation are his two goals. And I can vouch for the fact that we have been working with his administration since he started on workforce development.
That's what you do, really, for a
That's what
living.
we do.
Yeah.
We've partnered with them and some of the agencies. We've shared some grant applications, and quite frankly, the governor had a goal of creating so many thousand new apprentices in the state of Missouri, apprenticeships, and no one does that better than we do.
Well, and I mean this. If you have, you'll ask for an hour, but you better plan two. If you want to see that workforce development, like sometimes I see people. My buddy Keller will make fun of the word, and I'm like, go with me to the pipe fitters. Go out there to the city, and you'll actually get to see folks that are coming in, bettering their lives. Union's a private entity. They're training folks to go from making, I guess now 10, 12, whatever you make at McDonald's. Fine job. My son appreciates all the McDonald's folks that make those chicken nuggets. But you go from that and you have a career. I mean, when you're done with that, I heard that you don't sit around. There is no waiting to get hired. They have you plucked out a month before graduation.
Yeah, and truthfully, we're getting a lot of folks, not because the labor market's so tight, we're getting a lot of folks that are coming out of some of those part-time industries, and they're looking for that next step up, and they're looking to figure out, how can I get a job that has health insurance, or how can I get a job that's just one job instead of having to have two or three.
You could be
and so we're that leg up. We're that pathway.
Let's say you're a former state rep, right? And you're an Uber driver. If you wanted to go get trained, you could still drive your Uber.
That's right.
And go to the pipe fitters, training council.
Sure.
Hope of Vescovo yet.
Right.
Okay. What do you say to so Flat Doug right behind you? He's looking over. His eyes. It's like the Jesus painting. His eyes are always looking. No matter where you're in this room, his eyes are looking at you. What do you say to a Democrat though? That's like, I see you endorsing in these races. I see labor unions contributing in these races. We're here. Those folks' support is not as deep as ours. It doesn't go back as far.
Sure.
How do you? And you've personally been there, needing that money to fund the House caucus, needing that money in Senate races.
Right.
And you've been on all sides of this. I can understand some frustration, some Democrats being like, "Well, we've been here the whole time."
That's right. And look, in those races, we are supporting the Democrats. We may weigh in on a primary on both sides of the aisle. At the end of the day, we're going to go with who's with us the most. And so, we always probably are going to tend to go back that way. We're hoping that that's not always the case, that we're going to have Republicans that have these great labor voting records, and we've got several of them that are very helpful. But what I would say is...
your success is they don't come up for a vote.
That's exactly right. And that's the truth, and we haven't had those votes like we would normally have. But I can promise you that Flat Senator Doug behind me here has not stopped calling me anytime. He's doing an amazing job. I would say that if he was here. And so we're supporting his people. And you know,
Well,
he knows it. But we've supported people on the other side of the aisle. I think Senator O'Loughlin's doing a great job as well for her caucus.
I just like her, right? Like, I hate to admit
she's
that.
Just a super nice person.
You should probably pretend like you don't like these people. I actually like Cindy O'Loughlin.
Yeah.
Like, if you're in the car and you can take a phone call from somebody and she calls, I mean, just listen to her talk for half an hour is just entertaining to me. I think the reason is when she talks, I think that's what she actually thinks. I don't think she put it on a front, and that makes it so. I just admire the genuineness that she brings to what. Now, if you're on the other side and she's pissed at you, that's not where you want to be.
Sure.
But as far as just somebody that's genuinely enjoyable to be around, I can't think of anybody that I actually just like being around more.
Mm-hmm. And I will say this: we've worked on a couple of things together, just trying to work some stuff out. And she's a no nonsense person. She brings you in the room and just says, "Figure it out." Take all of the feelings aside and just get the issue figured out. That's what moves football in the Senate.
I want to talk about some state Senate race and what you're going to like the fall.
Sure.
But first, yes, I'm getting the text messages. I am going to update my DI detective game. So do you know what happened? What happened was I got tipped off a few weeks ago, and you've heard about DEI, right?
Sure.
Apparently, I think it means you're bad. You're not great. You're too much of you. No more of you. So and you've heard every Republican, the governor, lieutenant governor, senators, reps, leadership in the House all say, we're ending DEI. We're not doing it. That's over, right? Well, you heard them all say that last session, correct? Well, June 5th, I got a tip, and maybe I could be wrong. I might be wrong, saying that a department head spent their time on yours and my dime at a DEI conference on June 5th. So I decided I would put my DEI detective hat on, and I would just find out. And so I made a clue board here of each suspect. We know what the weapon is, DEI, and what department. And so I've been checking them off. And just so you know, 1 week from today, right here, I think we're going to find the solution, if there is one. But we're not telling the governor yet because we want to make sure. But I am happy to say I can cross 2 off here. The next 2 people off our DEI board, Carla Esslinger was not at a DEI conference. So we're going to take her off. Department of Elementary and Secondary Education, we can take that off of there. She was absolutely not there. The next person that was not at the DEI conference, we can say, is Chris Chin, the Director of Ag. That'll come as no surprise. Director of Agriculture. So now we're down here to Trevor Foley, Michelle Hadaway, Paul Nicholson, Biddet Boggs, Clora Myers, Valerie Hoon, Levon Kumpta, Drew Button, and Sandy Karsten is the ones we have left. We will be back tomorrow, especially if Kelton feels better, and we'll scratch a couple off, but we're going to bring it down. I promise you, folks, I give you my word, if I cannot solve this by a week from today, if I can't cross off everyone but one in 7 days, I'll just say there's no DEI. It's not happening. You're right. I was wrong. That's why we're not telling the governor until we complete our homework. It's been interesting, though. Most departments can tell you where their director was in 30 seconds. They might be doing something and have to call you back 20 minutes. Mm-hmm. Only one department took 5 days. It's just bizarre. It's almost like insurance that there's shenanigans going on. If I was just gonna say, it's almost like
something tells me you have a pretty good idea already.
It's almost like the person lives in Georgia and didn't even vote for the governor in 2000. I can't. I'm sure that's not the case, right? There's no way. I'm sure no one's at a DEI conference June 5th that there's pictures of. I'm sure that's not the case. There's no there. Look, please. You don't think that I'm actually mean there is, do you? Please, Missouri, please listen to me. I'm telling you, there's no possible way after as loud as the governor, the lieutenant governor, the Senate, the congressional delegation, every member of the legislature has said, we don't do DEI in Missouri. There's no possible way a director just flips the bird at all of you idiots, all of you lowly Missourians, because she's a Georgian that's above you and says, I do what I want. Like Cartman, I'm not a control director. I do what I want. I think there's no way that could be the case, right? There's no possible
Scott,
way.
If there's one thing I know that, if by chance I were a parking czar in Jefferson City, I know that you're going to find your person.
Well, we have 7 days. And Missouri, I promise you, if I cannot narrow this list down to 1 in 7 days, I'll throw my hands up and admit I was wrong. But, I mean, let's assume there's not only proof, what if there's pictures? I mean, it might make Wednesday in the Senate interesting. You know, because
We shall see.
that's why it's fun to listen. Now let's talk about, before we get into the nuts and bolts of things. The biggest story coming out of the primaries turned into not about what's going to happen in the fall. It's turned into drugs. So I
Yeah,
did a little
that's right.
looking. This is an airhead. It's kind of like a little chewy thing, right? And this is an airhead, right? So if you look at this, I honestly couldn't tell you which one was which.
That's right. I don't think I could.
Like, especially if you're at the gas station and you're getting something and of course, Gussie's a wheeler and dealer. I don't know where he gets it from. If you say you can get one thing, he wants three. And so in the gas station, pulls up this. This is actually drugs. Now, I guess, Jay Ashcroft, it would be tough, right? Your father is this legendary figure. You've ran statewide. You've done very well.
Mm-hmm.
You lead the polls till, I guess it depends on what poll, but at least to
Fourth,
Memorial Day.
yeah,
Let's say for sure Memorial Day, you're still leading by double digits. Then you come in and you lose the race. I understand being upset, right? And the governor didn't support you. Fine, his right, but still. I think it came down to, he said he rejects, the governor says, no more of this. Yeah, get rid of this. We're not doing this anymore. He can only do it where you have a liquor license.
Right.
So Mike Leary, who you served with, is kind of doing the running that agency. So if you have a liquor license, like, I don't know any gas stations that don't sell beer, right?
That's fair.
None I stop at anyway.
Right.
If you do find one, please let me know. I'll make sure I don't actually stop there. And this is not at Love's, right? This is not at Casey's.
Mm-hmm.
Your bigger,
A smaller.
yeah. And so the governor says, get rid of this. We're not doing this anymore. And Ashcroft says, no. Hey to the hey to the hey. Sell kids weed every day. I don't understand. And of all the people, like if our friend Mark Habas was the Secretary of State, I could see him saying, I'm not signing that. Jay Ashcroft sticking up for drug dealers. I'm like, okay, I did not have that on my fall bingo card. Didn't get that. And then he says, and the governor says, well, you're just mad because you lost. And kind of rubbing his face a little bit. And then Jay fires back, no, it's not just because I lost. It's because I want to sell drugs to kids. I don't know why. That's where I lost it.
Right.
It was the damnedest thing. You hate it because, Jay's going out, and this is not looking good. You let one more kid go to the emergency room because he thought this was an airhead, a real airhead. I am surprised this is where Jay's making his stand. And I'll be honest with you. I told you guys last week, I'm going to do some looking. If he's ever not signed one in the past, then okay, if that's common. But
Maybe there's some
yeah,
previous history where he's paused some of these before.
if you've never done one, and then you're this, which I'm not a fan of the executive orders either. I think it's just a bad way to do business.
Right.
But okay,
They're there for emergency situations when stuff like this arises.
This kind of looks like that might qualify. And plus, Jay Ashcroft, if I had to decide, is Jay Ashcroft on the side of selling this to kids or not selling this to kids? I'd have been on the side of not selling this to kids. But I guess it's a bold move, Cotton, right? I'm gonna step out. My last significant act in public office is to block the banning of drugs selling to kids.
Doesn't seem that's the sword to fall on.
Boy, it doesn't.
But-
And I think it's almost unfortunate because I think he deserved to go out better than falling on the sword of selling kids drugs marked as candy. I just don't know. I was thinking the hemp people. I know some people in the hemp industry. I can't believe they don't come down on this, right?
Here's what I would say: if you're going to market that stuff that way, sell it in the licensed distributorships.
Yeah.
And sell them in the union-recognized distributorships where we actually have
Is that a
unionized
hat tip to Dave
employees.
Cook? Do you recognize this scarf?
I absolutely do.
That
I
is
have
a
one.
UFCW scarf, and I don't wear a lot of scarves, so I thought I'd hang these.
Especially a bright yellow scarf.
I've tried to get him to send me another one, but I guess Dave is too busy organizing.
You know what? I might
dispensaries.
have one that I can
Well, as you
loan
can tell,
for you. That one's getting full.
We've used this one. We need another scarf.
Right.
No, but I thought that was awesome. That Dave is a constant. You want to talk about a good businessman? Dave Cook's a hell of a businessman.
Yes, he is.
I mean, he realized that, and got on that, and has had great success. And it makes total sense that they'd be in a union.
Yeah.
Total. It's a new business, new industry. Give me a prediction. You've watched a lot of government. Does ultimately they come to agreement and find a way to ban this?
Honestly, just being honest, I have never seen that before, and so I'm kind of shocked when I actually have seen the product, because obviously I read about it.
Yep.
I saw it. I never actually have seen one of the products like that where it's marketed that way. It is pretty shocking.
I honestly thought, oh, okay, this is just a group trying to, but then I see this and I'm like, if I'm in the hemp industry, or if I'm in the gas station industry, I find out who's doing this, and we have a talk.
Yeah,
right, because
right.
that ain't. I just don't think that your most gas station folks really want that in their place, and that's why I thought it'd be easy for the government.
Why would you want the liability of
Yeah.
a kid grabbing something off the shelf like that, and you lose your business over something that you made $1 off of or something? That just doesn't make sense.
All right, let's talk before we get into politics. Though, I always want to thank the good folks at United Fiber. If you're watching this up in the Great Northwest, there's no better rural broadband. You voted to authorize some rural broadband. Nobody's doing it better than the folks at United Fiber. And let's take you out of this. But if Sarah was going to have someone come to town, where would she put them up at here in Jeff City?
In Jeff City, what?
Yeah.
Oh, with the Marriott.
Yeah, the courtyard.
Sure, courtyard.
I mean,
Right.
Jag might try to skimp and send you the Fairfield, but if
That's
Sarah's
right.
in charge,
That's right.
you're going to be the classy times. You take you to the
Money's
courtyard.
tight. You can't just be. I mean, if I'm paying it, they're probably going not to the Marriott.
Yeah, that's why I brought Sarah to this, because
Sure,
everybody think
that's
it was just
right.
a shameless plug if we
No,
were stuck
for
with
sure.
you.
For
Let's
sure.
talk about
that
the
place
fall.
is great.
3 Senate races. Look, the governor's. I think Crystal Quaid will be a very good leader of the Democrat Party. As a Democrat, you have to feel good about putting up a candidate that could absolutely be governor.
Sure.
You're not putting up just
True.
some, oh, here's your turn. If Crystal were to win, she could be governor and would, I think, do a good job. Might not do the things I like, but she would do a good. The state would be in competent hands
Agreed.
if Crystal Quaid was governor.
Absolutely.
Under that, there's 3 state Senate races. Let's start with maybe the safest one for Democrats. Maggie Nurnberg, Jerry Nolte.
Mm-hmm.
Jerry Nolte can win votes.
He's a hard worker. He's been elected up there for a long time. Was elected for, here in Jefferson City from there for a long time. So she's going to have to work at it. I
thought she was going to coast. So Victor Holbert, when he filed, I thought, well, let's see how that goes.
Sure.
Then he dropped out. Then he was back in. I thought, okay,
Right.
that's not great. I think we saw with even Travis Smith. If you don't want to run, don't run, especially for a thing like state senate that's so all-encompassing.
Sure.
When Nolte filed, I'm like, ooh. I think the abortion issue should help Democrats.
I agree, and I'll tell you this. I think that district has gotten a little farther away from the our side of the aisle.
Well, it
I
contracted.
have so many thousands upon thousands of union members that live in that district. Got the Clay Como plant. All those folks that live up there.
I assume like Lauren Arthur.
That's right, and
Helps.
they're gonna turn out in force. They love Maggie. She's been there. She's a crazy hard worker.
She's almost got too much energy.
I mean, she's just all go. She's back and forth each side of the state working. So. But it's going to be a real race. It's going to be a real race all the way up to the last.
I don't think there was one other person you could have got. There wasn't a chief or something. I don't think there's anybody else that could have made that a race except Jerry Nolte. And I think he'll make it a race, though.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know the area obviously well enough because I live in St. Louis, but I think that knowing Jerry and having served with him, I know he's a hard worker. And still being elected up there all these years.
The district contracted because that part of the North Line's grown.
Right.
The district used to go up and bring in Liberty. I was actually talking to Ryan Sylvie this weekend. He had Liberty in that district when he had it, and he said he couldn't have won it without Liberty. That's all. I mean, it's well south of Liberty now. I do think the district and the board helps, but I'll tell you, do not sleep on Jerry Nolte. I thought Maggie Nuremberg was coasting in, and I think she's still the favorite. But Jerry Nolte's legit. I mean, that's a legit pull.
Yeah, she's gonna have to work all the way up to the election.
So that's going to bring Democrats to 10, right? If you had Weber wins.
Yeah.
So that's 10. Then I think the next one you go over to Chesterfield. Evolving district, David Gregory, Joe Peerless. I thought Joe Peerless was a tremendous recruit by Doug Beck.
Yeah.
I thought that was that district has potential for Democrats with abortion on the ballot, with Trump on
That's
the
right.
ballot. But you got to have the candidate, and you got a hell of a candidate in Peerless.
He does. He's got an incredible business background. Came out of Drury Hotels. He is again a really hard worker, and hats off to Senator Beck for recruiting him. And he's raised a ton of money in a district that's very tough. But you know, if you look at what happened a few short years ago, that district became very, very close with McCaskill. I can't remember exactly what it was offhand. I don't have paper in front of me, but it was really, really close.
So
and I think it's trended more towards the Democrats a little since then. So, but it's presidential year. We'll see what happens. We'll see what turnout is.
I'm actually a Deb Lavender fan. I have so much regard for her because she actually does the work. Like when she's on the budget committee, I would venture to say there's nobody serving in office right now that knows that state budget better than she does.
Yeah.
When she ran for state senate, I think it really showed in that district. Media is so expensive. You know, they get targeted because it's a wealthy district. They have direct mail from all kinds of people because it's easier to target them that way. She didn't do doors because of COVID.
That's right.
And Koenig is a door knocking. You can never take away that guy will work his tail off.
I think it killed her campaign.
I think you saw. What did Koenig outpace Trump by 9? Or maybe Trump lost the district by 3 or 4 and he won by 9?
I think it was right at 3.
Yeah.
I think is what it ended up being.
But Trump lost the district, right?
You know, I can't remember offhand.
And then Koenig comes in and wins, overperforms the party for sure.
Yes.
I think Gregory has a chance to be the same. I mean, David Gregory is an extremely talented guy. And I think I'd still rather be the Republican there than the Democrat.
Agreed.
But it used to be I'd rather be the Republican by this much. Now I'd rather be the Republican by like this much.
Yeah.
That is a district, if you don't win it, if the Democrats don't win that district in this 8 years, I think they'll win it 8 years from now if the trends continue.
Sure, I think that's right.
I think David Gregory will have to be mindful of his district when he votes, which if you're the president of the AFL-CIO, a Republican that has to be mindful of their district is music to your ears, right?
Yeah, we don't hate that.
And if you have to actually go win general elections,
That's right.
then, give me the prediction there. Who do you think wins that? Let me ask you.
You know, I would say it's probably a toss-up.
What about Kamala Harris? I've always had this thought that I think Joe Biden is the exact kind of Democrat where Missourians will. It's hard to get too fired up about Joe Biden. By all accounts, a nice guy. Comes off like a nice guy. Almost like with Democrats, you say George W. Bush was stupid. It just made it where it's hard to hate a stupid guy. Well, if you're going to say was senile, Biden's attack, until that debate, I thought if you had 80% of Biden that you had in 2020, he would put a high floor in for Democrats in the state. Kamala Harris, to me, is much more high risk, high reward. I think she's got a personality that can connect with people. And this is essentially a reality show anymore.
Yeah.
Her personality is real. The smile is real. Now, the cackle, the other party's going to have fine flaws. But I think her personality actually is something that could sell, not in Texas County, but in Chesterfield.
Yeah, and let me say this. I was a huge Joe Biden supporter. I was brokenhearted when he dropped out, and he very clearly was feeling his age. I'm sure there's a lot of weight on your shoulders being president.
Yep.
But you know what? He got that infrastructure bill passed for us, something that every president, both sides of the aisles for decades and decades have said they were going to do, and he got it done.
We love to talk about our guy, Lincoln Huff, as making it happen. But, let's be honest. He is wisely appropriating money that Joe Biden and Roy Blunt and Emmanuel Cleaver delivered.
That's right. And $9 billion into the state of Missouri for infrastructure improvements. And
can't argue with that.
That's right. And so
you can't drive down 70 and complain, then complain about Biden and say he never did anything when 10 years from now our kids are going to drive down a 6-lane 70 and maybe actually get somewhere between Odessa and Lee Summit.
Yeah. And, credit where credit is due as well. Senator Huff pulled that across the finish line, wrangled some heads, and got that done when everybody, including the governor, didn't necessarily agree.
I think it's
made it happen.
Only fair to say you got to look back and say this opportunity emanated from Joe Biden.
That's
whether
right.
you like Joe Biden or not. You could still very well say overall he's a bad president, but you got to give him the due. If you're going to give Lincoln Huff the due, you kind of got to give due to him and Roy and Cleaver.
Yeah, but
really nobody else in the state.
Talk about the vice president. Young people are excited. Women are excited. and it's an energy that we haven't seen in a while. Is it energy over the candidate, or is it energy because it's somebody that's different from President Biden
Could be both.
in his adventure? It could be.
I don't think Kamala Harris is the toxic candidate some Republicans are hoping that she is.
Well,
I don't think
mean,
she's as good as Joe Biden in Missouri. No, I
she's
don't.
a former state prosecutor.
Yeah.
I mean, she's
got some personality to her.
Yeah.
It's like Donald Trump.
She's got a lot of pushback. She's not going to just sit there and,
She's watchable. If you're clicking the remote, she's
the
watchable.
president will kind of, take it all in and, maybe once in a while give just a little bit back, but she's not going to do that.
She would fit in a roast, like the roast we're going to have Monday night, 6 o'clock out of the Soybean Association.
That's right.
Going to roast John Patterson. Look at this lineup. We have Cindy O'Loughlin's going to tell jokes. It's going to be great.
Right.
I think we're going to twist Quentin Lucas's arm into telling a few jokes. Chad Perkins going to tell a few. Bringing back Wiley Price.
Oh, okay.
Wiley could really steal this show. He has nothing to lose and great material. I'm really looking forward to Wiley. And then we're close with Cinder Coleman. Is there a person who would be better? Like, I start the roast off and I tell a few jokes.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I'm really having a hard time limiting my Mary Elizabeth jokes to fit in other people. Like, Chad is funny. I mean, I've got a couple jokes about Chad, but Mary Elizabeth is such a target-rich environment that I'm not sure this roast is going to be the roast of Mary Elizabeth Coleman featuring John Patterson, because there's just so much to cover. And, like, if you open the Post-Dispatch any given day, you could have something else. And none of it's like, oh, that's terrible. It's all just, like, kind of funny, right? Like, it's all just bizarre and sort of humorous to me. So, well, we'll see if it's humorous to her Monday night.
You got to have a good sense of humor.
And I
Sometimes
also
you got to make fun of yourself.
See, I think she'll do very well telling jokes, too. I think, as long as provided she's actually shows up, which if she doesn't, then I promise you if she doesn't show up, the jokes are going to get... I've got a list of jokes I've written in it when I was in a dark place that if she ghosts me, I'm actually going to tell. It might be a better roast if she does ghost us, because then it will just turn into an absolute hate fest led by myself, someone that knows how to do it. But if she actually shows up, when she gets the mic, I think she's going to be great. Yeah. I think she'll be hilarious. And I think everybody else will have a great time telling jokes about her. Like with Patterson, I mean, there is a lot of jokes. Mostly she's talking about House Republicans and just how bizarre they are. I heard they called J.D. Vance weird. I'm like, you don't even know. Come over here for me. Let me show you guys something over here. Okay, so nationally, I think if you had to pick a winner, I think Harris. The only problem she's going to have is this. The national media has came out so hard, so over the top. When you run for president, you're going to have a bad few days. Mm-hmm. Something's going to happen.
That's right.
Even if you do everything right, it's going to be conjecture.
She's on a high right now.
And the folks that normally defend a Democrat have come out so far, I'm not sure they have credibility to come back and defend her when she has that bad day. It's almost like a ball team that scores 10 runs one day and gets shut out the next day. You might have, I think, a national media that I think generally your traditional media, Democrat, can rely on for some help. I don't think they matter as much as Republicans, but they're definitely some help. I don't think they can be as helpful because they came so heavy and so hard from the beginning.
Sure, I understand that. I think that the smart commentators that are out there and some of the pundits have said, looking at the polls, that's fine for now, but this is a dogfight all the way to election day. I mean,
and Trump always runs a little better than he polls.
And you look at those battleground states. Now, I will say that if you're looking at the blue wall states, she looks like she's doing very, very well and opening up a lead in some of those Sun Belt states, and including Georgia. Yeah. Now, polls are wrong more often than they're right.
But polls are consistently, I think Trump consistently gets underpolled.
I think last election showed that.
I do think now in the midterms the Republicans overpolled generally, but I think Donald Trump in 16 and 20. I think I do believe there are people that are going to vote for Trump that don't want to tell a pollster for whatever, or they don't poll Trump's votes. I don't know what it is. I always polling's very challenging.
Right.
But I think generally if you take it for what is a snapshot in time, I think you could find that it works, and when it works. I think even the polls that are successful at polling other races have a hard time polling Donald Trump. There are people that are embarrassed to say they're for him.
Yeah.
Let's talk about the race I really want to talk about. Oh, first, the first congressional district. You had to feel good. I mean, it was a little embarrassing, frankly. And I mean, Cory Bush had become embarrassing for the state of Missouri, in my opinion.
Well, here's what I'll say. We left that race open, and we had individual unions that felt very strongly one way or another. They were either very supportive of Wesley or just anti-Cory Bush, and we had some that on maybe the more service sector oriented that wanted to support her.
That is such an interesting part of your job. Is you really do have to balance.
There's a balance.
You have service that
sure.
are growing unions, successful unions, that were probably more Cory Bush folks. Then you had your trades guys that you came out of that world that were extremely pro-Bell. How do you navigate that from your position?
It's difficult. It's not always easy. But for the folks that wanted to change, I think they felt the same way of what you just suggested, that we didn't have someone that was bringing resources back to the state. We had people that were taking credit for it.
I think that
but
vote
not
really
bring
hurt
it back. But that infrastructure vote
really hurt her.
It really hurt her.
Now listen,
and not just that.
The Republicans were total hypocrites too. They have no right.
Oh,
anybody that served.
It's embarrassing.
The only person to be proud of is Roy Blunt.
Our congressional delegation that's not bringing these resources back to our state. That's why you're there.
Why are you there? Yeah.
Why are you there?
You can go whine on
That's
Facebook without being in Congress. Just go get your Facebook page and whine.
Right.
You got to bring home stuff. And I'm with you. I thought every one of them should have been ashamed that voted no. That's why you could be so proud of Roy Blunt. And that's why, frankly, people respect Emanuel Cleaver like they do.
That's right.
And I guess Wesley Bell would have been a yes vote.
I'll say this. We also represent people that build fighter aircraft. I represent thousands and thousands of people at Boeing. And she was not voting for anything for the Department of Defense. And we've got jobs that pay on average $85,000 a year at Boeing. And we're trying to keep those fighter lines open. And we're trying to make sure those people stay employed. And while they're waiting to try to get this next generation of stealth fighter, which we certainly hope they get, they're doing a $2 billion investment in St. Louis right now,
how's Eric Schmidt helping on that? He's on that committee, correct? What do they call it? The Armed Services Committee.
I'll just be honest. That stuff's above my head as far as the procurement in D.C. We've got national staff that handle that stuff, so I don't honestly know.
If you call him, though, you can get him on the phone, right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
And that matters.
Absolutely.
All right, then enough national. I think Wesley Bell will be a good congressman.
I do too. I think he'll reach across, not necessarily just the aisle to work with people, but he'll reach across to those Cory Bush supporters, and he'll at least make the effort to try to bring them into the fold and say, give them a chance.
Can the county council in St. Louis ever just get normal? Honestly, when Charlie Dooley was there, it did kind of feel normal. I didn't know Buzz Westfall, but everybody says he was the greatest guy. It just feels like it's been odd for a long time. Always
that underpinning of ready for the next election and who's feuding with who. It's been a while. It's been a while since there's not been headlines and trying to move the county forward.
It feels like the county executive race is a big money deal. And it's the most expensive race to run and all that. But the county council races aren't big money deals. It just doesn't seem like much money is raised or spent.
Yeah.
But by God, they fight like cats and dogs. It doesn't matter who's there. It's just always a fight.
Yeah.
Does it ever calm down?
It hasn't for quite a while.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think there's something about the dynamic of that setup that I'm not sure. I just read this great book about the city-county breakup. It was written in the 60s. Looking back, it was written back on 100 years of how the city-county breakup.
Right.
And I tell you, I'm not St. Louis had a bicameral assembly coming out of that breakup. I don't know what you do in the county, but it does feel like the structure doesn't lead to a lot of success, a lot of harmony for sure.
Well, as you know, I live in the city of St. Louis, and we've got our own issues that we're dealing with. And I'll say something that's extremely unpopular with some of my friends and the people that I know. I think at some point St. Louis needs to enter St. Louis County. The duplication of government that we have between St. Louis County and St. Louis City and all of those municipalities is an extreme waste of taxpayer dollars.
What's the argument to not do that? as an outsider, I'm with you. I don't even understand why you'd want two county clerks, collectors, or whatever.
I think that St. Louis in general, we don't like change at all. You can rename a street or you can rename a concert venue, but we are not going to ever change what we call that
Change
place.
the damn manager of the ball team.
Would agree with you 100% on that.
Yeah, I just think as an outsider, but as a person, I love St. Louis. We joke around. I could do without some of the suburban stuff, but as far as the city, South City, Casey just won me over. I love South City. I can enjoy a Central West End evening for a little bit. I love the Cardinals probably more than is even healthy, but it does feel like I just don't know the argument except we don't like. I get that we don't like change, but I don't understand the argument.
I think you've got entrenched government and bureaucracy that people don't necessarily want to give up that control, which some of that I understand.
Sure.
You want to have, in the grand scheme of things, I like being able to call my alderperson up and saying, hey, this tree fell down over here,
But
as
you could
opposed
still
to
do that,
calling,
though.
well, you're going to get a staff person like you would call in Jefferson City. So, I mean, I understand a little of that.
But you still have a city council in Kirkwood.
That's right. That's
you
right.
could still call your alderperson.
Trying to get that, but why do we have, 19 police departments? I'm making that number up. And why do we have 2 street departments? And then,
But you
that
could
stuff doesn't
see
make
the
sense to
city
me.
re-enter the county, and all that stuff that existing duplication could exist.
There's a lot of bad misinformation out there. There's like if you're a Republican on the St. Louis County Council, you don't want 300,000
Sure,
more
I get
Democrats
that.
seats, right? So there's that aspect of it. So I think you have Republicans that aren't necessarily in control, but they're, St. Louis County for a while was always on the cusp. They've elected Republican county executives before. It's been a little while.
I think it hurt Mark Harder that he had voted for Shalonda Webb, one of the, I don't know her well, but very competent, but it's pro-choice, which has nothing to do with the county council, but
Right.
him being in that crew that voted for her, I think Ernie Tracus, it hurt him that he was a Sam Page ally.
But for, all the faults back and forth, you're in the city and you're saying, why do I want to go to the county? County council seems like they're kind of at each other's throats as well. But from a taxpayer standpoint, from a financial standpoint, it makes sense. But most importantly, from a regional jobs creation standpoint, we have to merge all of this stuff
And
together.
changing that crime
we
number.
have got to get, and that's such a skewed
matters.
number, and it
But
matters.
it matters, though.
And we're the only place in the country where it's taken out of context like
Maybe
that.
it's gaming numbers.
So-
I'm not I won't break more laws than I probably follow, but that number matters.
Yeah, and when we're trying to bring, and I say we, but the larger business community, when we're trying to offer incentives and bring people, bring jobs to St. Louis, to the region, it's such a fractured structure that in a lot of cases they don't know who they're supposed to be talking to. Are we moving into St. Louis City? Are we moving to St. Louis County? Are we looking into St. Charles into the outer region? And I think Greater St. Louis Inc. has tried to kind of corral that stuff. And so my hat's off to them and Jason Hall over there
day's
for
work,
doing
though.
that. But
All
it's
right,
a lot of
state
stuff.
senate race, the last one in Independence, Senator Rizzo's seat. So you have Robbie Sauls, the
Right.
Democrat guy you know very well. Then you had kind of an upset. You had Aaron McMullen, a rep in Independence, Joe Nicole, who ran a very good race against Senator Searpoy in Lee Summit, the Senate District South. I honestly thought he made a mistake. I thought, well, if you ran so well, you're probably the front runner for when Senator Searpoy's term limited. But he ran in Independence and beat a very good candidate, Aaron McMullen. I would say if I'm the Democrats, that's what I wanted. I would rather have the guy there. But I don't think any Democrat group has any problem aligning behind Robbie Sauls, right?
No, and I
Made it easier now.
I just wonder if Aaron McMullen was a sitting state representative, had a lot of institutional support behind him. Will that institutional support be there for this new guy that took him out? I don't.
I got to see Caleb Rowden and Dave Schatz. They sat with Andrew Koenig, right? And they decided to pour millions of dollars into that race.
Right.
And he made him regret it every damn day until they finally took his committees away from him. Is Cindy O'Loughlin? I mean, you kind of you watch these cycles.
Sure.
When the folks that were out for Dave and Caleb would organize, run their folks. Dave and Caleb would be. I'm not saying they didn't nudge a little, but they were very passive about it. Nothing like what Senator Lemke was able to do. Is Cindy O'Loughlin? I mean, she's watched it. Fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, I guess, shame on you. If she gets fooled, and Nicola wins with her support and comes up with the stated goal of making her life miserable, did she get sucker played, or is it just obvious?
I think puts her in a bad spot. I've been in
Terrible spot.
Been in party leadership positions before, and your job is to elect people of your own party. And so I think
people are out for it?
I think she has to. I think she has to. She has to defend the seats. She has to go after the seats that are open. And I wouldn't fault her for doing that. From the outside, I'd say, yeah, why are you bringing another problem here? You've just arguably gotten rid of some problems, and hopefully you have a Senate that can actually function again.
If you have a senator who gets elected on the stated goal of hating leadership and stymieing every Republican priority,
sure,
he will kill. You've seen this. He will kill 3-4 times as much Republican legislation as Robbie Saul's ever thought about.
Sure.
So if you're a Democrat, it's like, yeah, why don't we send the guy that's actually going to screw these people up? And maybe Joe. Look, I don't know Joe Nicola that well, but if I'm Joe Nicola, I assume there's a conversation that's happened or is happening with him and Senator O'Loughlin. You've been on every side of all these in your career. What would you want to hear if you were her to make you feel good about sending significant amounts of money into that race? Because you are going to send some money to Gregory. I mean, they're going to have to spend money there.
That's right.
You got Nolte, who's by every definition a much longer shot, but you know what you're getting in Jerry Nolte, a very talented legislator. What would you have to hear from Joe Nicola to make you feel good cutting those resources loose to the 11th?
If I were in a leadership position, I think I wouldn't have much choice in doing it one way or another.
Do you do like $100,000? They go get him, Tiger.
You very could well do something of that nature.
I think that there's going to be a check written from Senate leadership, and you'll see some of the guys running for floor leader will kick in. But if I'm Cindy O'Loughlin, there's a difference between I'm going to write you a check and say, good luck, guy, and I'm going to go do what they did for Koenig, which was pay for a significant part of that race.
Here's what I would say. You have got the institutional folks in the building, right? The lobby corps, the people that they have had issues that have been tied up in the Missouri Senate.
Not even partisan ones, just mundane
not even
things.
partisan ones, and they are fed up. And so I think that if I'm Senator O'Loughlin, I have to have a real hard conversation with my donors to their group. And if I'm those outside donors, why am I going to funnel money to the Senate majority when I'm going to, if they're going to give it to another extreme problem that's going to stop legislation, whether they care about it or not. And so I think that if I'm some of this institutional money that typically comes, I would want to put my brakes on what I'm giving before and want some guardrails to make sure that they're not electing somebody that's going to be an extreme problem for everybody trying to get legislation passed.
I think the telling part of this whole cycle is going to be, one, does Trump just bust through in a place like Independence where he's going to pull Joe Nicola and other folks in,
finish line,
which I think is absolutely possible. And you're not going to be able to, and I bet it's going to be even hard to poll if he gets to that point. The second part is going to be how much the Senate leadership really weigh in on this race, or do they decide we're going to make sure we reelect Gregory? We're going to take a flyer on Nolte, and we're going to throw some money here. But I just think at some point you are a fool if you just continue to have people come in, dump all over you, and you just keep. Not only are you signing up for it, you're paying for it. I mean, you're paying for your own problems. I think it's going to be very interesting in a test. I mean, Nicola has passed the test of are you a good door-to-door politician? He absolutely is. He's passed the test. Can you organize a campaign on a big scale? He's done it twice. It's like a guy going from AA to AAA. Well, the pitches they chase in AA, they don't chase in AAA. Can you go develop your skills and kind of win that inside game to get that $1 million you probably need to win that seat? That's going to be, to me, the most telling part of this cycle. Last question, Mike Keogh, if he's governor, does your members have anything to worry about?
I hope not. I think that there's always going to be some of those smaller items that we're not going to agree on. But as I'm sure you're well aware,
Which could be true for anybody in the
that's
state.
right, absolutely. But
representing
I've got a good relationship with the Lieutenant Governor, and I'm hopeful that he'll at least listen. And I'm hopeful that he will continue to carry on Governor Parsons' job creation, workforce development mantra. That's been great. We want to grow jobs in this state, and I'm sure he does as well.
You just can't grow the jobs you want without a partner there. I just don't think it's possible.
Sure.
Without folks training and putting in the work. Like the great joke is there's no protest at Lynn Tech, but it's a great school. I mean, if you go to Lynn Tech, you don't have to get the newspaper to find the one ads. They're coming to you.
That's right.
And pitching you.
That's right.
Jacob, thank you so much for the time. I very much appreciate it.
Thank you.
We'll be back tomorrow. Not sure who we'll have, but I promise you, I believe I'm going to be able to scratch a couple more off. We're getting down to the wire, 7 days, but I believe your DI detective. I can't say I'll solve the case, but I'll give you all I got. I need to be in like Chrysalis and Patterson's union, right? Now that I'm a detective. I will be here regardless. I'll either just apologize to the state, say I couldn't solve it, or a week from today we'll have it solved. We'll get a little closer tomorrow. Join us here on This Week in Missouri Politics, Midweek Update.